Morning.
Morning.
This is the March 14th Kankakee County Board meeting. The invocation today is going to be led by Mr. Seroy. Please stand.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for all the kind gathered. Ask you to bestow your blessing. We ask that you give us insight, knowledge, and trust to come together in one heart. Father, be with and protect all of our emergency personnel, firemen, daily. Also protect and comfort our military and the family sacrifices they go to protect our great. Lastly, I ask that you guard and protect school buses, bus drivers, make safe day. In your name we pray, Father.
Amen. Good. Join me in a pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can get a roll call, please.
Mr. Trupp.
Present.
Mr. Washington. Mr. Legess. Mr. Stauffenberg. Mr. Vickery. Mr. Olthoff. Mr. Hess. Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. Mr. McConnell. Mr. Mulcahy. Mr. Scott. Mr. Snipes. Mr. Byrne. Mr. Seroy.
Present.
Mr. Lear.
Present.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Present.
Mr. Reed. Mrs. Weber. Mr. Einfeld.
Present.
Mrs. Peters. Mrs. Evans. Mr. Payton.
Present.
Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter.
Present.
And Mr. Wheeler.
Present. We have a quorum. Under public commentary, I have one person ask for public comment. That would be Mayor Mark Hodge from Hopkins Park. Let me get you going back there.
Good morning, Mayor Hodge, Hopkins Park. There's one item on the agenda that deals with my area of responsibility. That's an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Hopkins Park, Pembroke Township, and the County Sheriff. I just want to say that this particular item will really uplift our community, bring us back together again, and I strongly encourage the board to pass this intergovernmental agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? If you could, please state your name.
Rebecca Parks. I am the program supervisor at Healthy Families at Aunt Martha's. We're a new program, and so we actually service all of Kankakee County. And I am just here I'm meeting with all of the different council meetings to ask for support. If you know of any teen moms in any of our county, first-time teen moms, our program is here to, the goal is to stop child abuse or neglect from happening from entering the homes, to provide homes visiting services. So we are new. We just started in January, and so I will be here today with any information as well. But I just thought I would let the county know that we are present.
Thank you. With no other public commentary, moving on, we don't have any communications, presentations, vacancy appointments, or certificates of recognition. The minutes of the last meeting from February 14th, I need a motion to approve the minutes. Mr. Washington, second Mr. Payton. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion passes. Claims Committee report from January 2017. I need a motion to approve the Claims Committee report. Mr. Byrne. Second, Mr. Scott.
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they have examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants payable out of fund as follows. For the general fund, $975,567.52. All other funds, $5,520,613.92 for a total for the month of January of $6,496,181.44, all of which is respectfully submitted as amended by Mr. Johnson, Mr. Lejes, Mr. Hildebrand, Mr. Payton, Mr. Ritter, Mr. Hess, Mr. Seroy, Mr. Scott, Mr. Mulcahy, Ms. Weber, and Mr. Wheeler. For the highway fund, the total amount of $373,931.87. All other funds, $70,036.54, for a total month of January 2017 of $443,968.41, all of which is respectfully submitted by Mr. Johnson, Mr. Lejes, Mr. Hildebrand, Mr. Payton, Mr. Ritter, Mr. Hess, Mr. Seroy, Mr. Scott, Mr. Washington, Mr. Mulcahy, Ms. Weber, and Mr. Wheeler.
Alrighty, I would need a motion to approve. Ms. Parker, second. Mr. Seroy, and that will be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Tripp.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Mr. Lejes. Mr. Hess. Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. McConnell. Mulcahy. Mr. Scott. Mr. Snipes. Mr. Byrne. Mr. Seroy. Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber. Mr. Einfeld. Mrs. Peters. Mr. Payton. Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Parker. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, motion carries. Department reports.
The County Collector's Monthly Report. We have examined the January 31st, 2017 monthly report of the ex officio and County Collector, and to the best of our knowledge, find it to be true and correct. A total cash and investments of $761,523.12. The County Treasurer's Monthly Report. We've examined the January 21st, 2017 monthly report of the County Treasurer, and to the best of our knowledge, find it to be true and correct. Total checking accounts of a deficit of $719,115.48. The general fund deficit of $5,079,645.27. The Coroner's Monthly Report for January, there were 110 total calls, 13 coroner cases, 6 autopsies, 6 toxicology, no outside autopsies, no donations, 2 indigent, 2 x-rays, 64 cremations. The coroner's income summary for January 2017. A total of $5,423.90. The Circuit Clerk's report for the month of January 2017, total end of the month checks dispersed $347,720.19. The Recorder's Monthly Report for December 2016, total cash available of $116,077.27, same paid to the County Treasury. The Recorder's Monthly Report for January 2017, disbursements to the Treasurer of $98,367.75. The December report for the County Clerk, a total of fees of $28,859.97. The January report of the County Clerk of fees collected of $29,768.16. The Animal Control report for the month of December, there were total amounts of $18,644.65.94 in the IPTIP building fund. There were 73 animals handled. And in January for the Animal Control Department, there were total fees of $28,230.61. In the IPTIP building fund of $76.39. and there were 78 animals handled. The building report for the month of January 2017, there were 29 permits issued for $6,985, extra fees of $1,525, for a total of January of $8,510. The monthly resolution list from the county trustee for February 2017 is placed on file of $17,407 to the county. And the Iroquois Kankakee Regional Office of Education, I, Greg Murphy, Iroquois Kankakee Regional Superintendent of Schools, State of Illinois, do solemnly swear that the attached report is a true statement of the receipts and disbursements of the county support funds in my office for the quarter ending November 30th, 2016. Signed, Greg Murphy, Superintendent, Regional Office of Education.
Thank you. So can I get a motion to combine and accept the reports as presented? Mr. Tripp, second. Mr. Reinfeld. That's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. On the consent agenda, we're going to pull number 7. To start off with, we didn't get the attachment for that on the equipment, so that's going to be brought back next month on the surplus equipment. Is there any others to be pulled and considered separately? Second time, any others to pull and consider separately? All right, I guess we'll read the title into the record.
The adoption of an ordinance for whistleblower protection, ordinance number 14-1. An ordinance creating section 42-32 of the Kankakee County Code curfew. An amendment to the Children's Advocacy Center fee. A polling place change, Auto 2 precinct from Wolf Burial Vault to Zion Lutheran Church in Chabant. An ordinance authorizing the recorder's fraud referral and review process and establishing fines for the unlawful clouding of title. Declaration and surplus of unwanted equipment for the Kankakee County Clerk's Office. Readopted the 2012 Kankakee County Solid Waste Management Plan. The reappointment of George Washington Jr. to the Geographic Information System Committee. The appointment of R. Shane Ritter to the Geographic Information System Committee. The reappointment of Mark Rogers, County Engineer, Highway Department, to the Geographic Information System Committee. The appointment of Eric Blair, County Supervisor of Assessments, to the Geographic Information System GIS Committee. The appointment of Timothy Nugent, Economic Alliance of Kankakee County, to the Geographic Information System Committee. The appointment of Lori Gadboy, County Recorder of Deeds, to the Geographic Information System Committee. The Kankakee County Zoning Map Amendments for 2017. And declaration and disposal of surplus and unwanted vehicle for the Kankakee County Board Chairman. Okay.
We not have 7.
Oh, that's on consent, sorry. And authorizing the county board chairman or his designee to sign the intergovernmental agreements with Pembroke Township and the Village of Hopkins Park for policing with the county sheriff's department.
Okay. All righty, thank you. All right, that's a roll call vote. I get all those in favor, say aye. Those opposed? Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. I apologize. I need a motion to approve. First, I need a motion. Ms. Dunbar, second, Mr. Tholen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. My fault. Moving ahead. To the Highway and Buildings Committee, need to read the entire resolution into the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois. Whereas on February 22nd, 2017, bids were received and opened, and the Committee on Public Highways and Buildings of the Kankakee County Board met to consider the bid for the public highway improvements now coming under the jurisdiction of the Kankakee County Board. Whereas the said committee determined that the following qualified bidder submitted the low bid as listed below for the work herein described and did award the bid subject to the confirmation of this county board, whereas the said committee recommends that the confirmation of the award of the contract be as follows.
Can I get a motion to waive the reading and adopt as presented? Mr. Washington, second. Mr. Ritter? That's a roll call vote. It's not a voice vote as mentioned. Be just a moment, please. Thank you.
Ready? Mr. Tripp?
Aye.
Mr. Washington? Mr. Legess? Mr. Hess? Mr. Tholen? Mrs. Polk? Mr. McConnell? Mr. McConnell? Mr. Mulcahy? Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Snipes? Mr. Byrne?
Aye.
Mr. Seroy?
Aye.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Hildebrand?
Aye.
Mrs. Weber? Mr. Einfeld? Mrs. Peters? Mrs. Evans? Mr. Payton? Mr. Johnson? Mrs. Parker? Ms. Dunbar? Mr. Ritter?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye, motion carries.
Okay.
Moving on to the Finance Committee, authorizing an additional $1 million of interfund borrowing from the county highway funds. We could read that motion into the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois. Whereas following the adoption of a county budget, funds in one account may be transferred to another account under the authority of the Illinois Supreme Court, Gates v. Schweitzer, 347, Illinois 353, 359, and 55 ILCS 5/6-1003. And whereas the Kankakee County Board has passed its annual budget for the fiscal year 2017, a resolution number 2016-11-9120, and has authorized interfund borrowing by resolution number 2017-214-187 up to $6,530,000. And whereas the county's finance director has advised that the general fund will become short of funds early in the 2017 fiscal year and recommends interfund borrowing to correct the cash flow of deficiencies that may occur in the general fund, and whereas the county has $3 million in outstanding tax anticipation warrants that must be paid prior to all other claims when property taxes are distributed in July 2017. Whereas the Finance Committee at its regularly scheduled meeting of March 1st, 2017, after review, discussion, and consideration, recommends the additional interfund borrowing and transfer of funds from County Highway Fund to the General Fund in an amount of $1 million for fiscal year 2017, and that the funds borrowed will be paid back to the original accounts without interest on or before July 15, 2017, when property taxes are dispersed. Whereas the Finance Committee at its regularly scheduled meeting of March 1st, 2017, after review, discussion, and consideration, recommends that when the funds authorized under this resolution are returned to the original accounts, an additional $100,000 be paid back to the Highway Department as partial reimbursement for other funds borrowed. Now therefore be it resolved by the County Board of Kankakee, Illinois, that after review, discussion, and consideration, interfund transfer of funds are hereby authorized for the fiscal year 2017 from the County Highway Fund that have been determined to be reserve funds, and a sum of $1 million may be placed in the general fund when it has been determined to be necessary and prudent, with such transfers to be made without interest, and such transferred funds plus an additional $100,000 will be returned to their original accounts by July 15, 2017, when taxes are dispersed.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I need a motion to approve to start with. Mr. Einfeld, a second. Mr. Payton. As far as discussion goes, I wanted to bring this back and pull it off the consent agenda in case anybody had any questions. This is a short-term situation to get through until July. We have a couple of things that we need to do. First of all, obviously we have to meet our payroll obligations. We have vendors that we have to get paid. The other side of it is we also have to demonstrate that we have the intent to pay back the Highway Department for previous funds borrowed. We have not done that in the past, and this is a step forward into that situation. So how we got here is part of the discussion, but I guess what we're going to do in the future is also part of this as well. Mr. Legess.
I just had a question. 1, 2, 3,
The fourth whereas, the county has $3 million in outstanding tax anticipation warrants that must be paid prior to all other claims when property tax are dispersed in July of 2017. Don't we only pay the first half of what we owe, the $3 million?
Yes, we do. We have a first payment and a second payment in
So
September.
actually, that wouldn't be $3 million.
The number is not a full 3, correct. You are correct.
It would
That's a
be
good catch.
$1.5 million or a half or whatever. I'm reading it that we got to pay our whole tax
Right.
anticipation warrants in July, which we don't. I think we pay half.
And I have to actually, it is half, Mr. McCarty? Okay,
It's
I
half,
didn't know
and
if it
then
was
the second
60-40
half
or if
and-
it's half and half.
Yeah, the second half is after the second installment.
Just a moment, please. Mr. McCarty?
It's written in the ordinance as 55% and 45% is the actual percentage.
Okay, so I didn't think it was 50. So 55%.
45% is the first percentage, 55% is the second in September.
All right, so we'll just change that. Instead of the 3 million, we'll say 55% of the tax anticipation warrant due in July.
Yeah, and 55%.
So a motion to amend, Mr. Legess?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Second on the amendment, Mr. Washington. Do we need a roll call on the amendment? Is it money? So, okay, we think it's a voice vote. Okay, gotcha. We'll do a roll call on the amendment and then a full voice vote on the full on. So, we'll go roll call on this, on the amendment. That's what you, Jeff, did you say roll call on?
I think the roll. You're not gonna be able to do a roll call vote. Borrow and expend. It has to be a voice vote.
It has to be
You can do a voice vote on both.
Could you
Final one
explain
has
that
to be.
to the?
Sure. So because you're not only borrowing money here, but then you're authorizing the county to expend funds by paying back that 100,000, that has to be a voice vote. You can do a roll call. I'm sorry. You can do a voice vote on the on the amendment.
Okay, so
Roll
just the
call vote
opposite.
on the ordinance.
Gotcha. Yeah, you had it. All right, so let's do this. We'll do a voice vote on the amendment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
No.
So any other discussion on this? Mr. Snipes?
Yeah, to me, it would read better, and I'm sure it's okay, but when we get to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraph, where we get to the around the third, the second was a continuation of the second, but the third line, if we can put the word and an additional 100,000 versus just constantly going without it. Return to the original accounts and an additional 100,000, or is it just why are we doing?
It's not in my packet, so
So it's going to say, oh, and an additional, and additional.
it's not in.
Okay, that's fine.
Are we good, Mr. Seroy?
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the payment, but did not dates on last on those resolutions passed and borrowed the other three. Did not- I mean, we're going to hold you, Mr. Chairman, but I want to make sure that dates prior to other resolutions might have.
Sure, I
don't have.
I understand. And as my conversations with Mr. Rogers on this one, it was there was not a date put on the second one. I don't know if you were all. Some people were not in that meeting, but we pushed for the date, and that did not pass with that on the second 500,000, but the initial 3 million. I don't recall, but I believe, according to Mr. Rogers, you could speak to that. There was supposed to be a date put on that one, and we didn't meet that date because that's when the bottom fell out, and we went $3 million in the hole during that same time period. Now, whether we need to revisit that, I don't know if that is something that we can even revisit at this point, because we're, in my opinion, in violation of that ordinance. So the intent on the $100,000 would be to actually start paying that back in small increments to the best of our ability. The problem that we have right now is this million is not just for a buffer. This is actual operating capital to get us until July when we repay it back in second position behind the tax anticipation warrant. So believe me, your point's very well taken. And part of the longer range plan, meaning 2, 3, 4 years, is what are we going to do to get the highway department, because get them back to normal, because they got bridge projects coming up. You know, there's things that we need to do out there that we need to take care of, and I'm sure that they need to have that predictability, and I'm sure the auditors that are looking at the books need that predictability as well. $100,000 is good faith, but it doesn't build many bridges. So, Mr. Scott, just a moment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted no for this in finance, and I'm going to vote no again today. While I appreciate that we can borrow the money and then pay it back in July, it includes no type of budget cuts or no type of movement in a better direction. We're essentially borrowing money from July to pay for April and May. So that's why I voted no, and that's why I will again. Thank you.
That's appreciated. I will say that by dint of us not getting another $1 million on our tax anticipation warrants, that is a budget cut. We also did reduce expenses by $2 million over the previous year. So while it's not everything we all wanted, and I appreciate your position because it is a principle, but we are in the business of making sure that our employees are paid, and we address some things. We'll see what happens on April 4th. That's all I can say, because that is a clear indication of where we're going from this point forward. Mr. Tripp.
I really don't like doing this either, but I don't think we have many choices right now. Did we pay back that $500,000 that we set a date? And I don't think we paid it back. We may have, but I don't recall that.
No, sir, we did not. We didn't set the date on the $500,000. That discussion is we couldn't set a date, according to previous leadership was. They said we can't set a date because we don't know when we'll be able to pay it back. But I believe a date was set on the first $3 million. And I want to look back, and please, I have to check because we have to look through all of that.
May be wrong, but I will support it. I don't like doing it, and hopefully that we can work our way around where we don't have to do this anymore.
That's
I
the
will
goal.
support it.
Thank you. Mr. Eifeld?
I'm not positive either on the first $500,000, but it seemed to me that the bulk of the conversation was we really didn't want to put a date on it and then fall down on the date going through the audits and things we had by not making it, which was another red check against us on top of things. I think that's the way it went on that, the $500,000.
Okay. So, and I think it may be appropriate to, at some point, and I'll talk with the state's attorney's office about this, about bringing back that original resolution to amend the date. So we have some type of date certain when we start looking at that original principle there. We do need to honor our commitments, but I don't think that date was originally met, because that's when the sales tax went away and our other income streams went away, and we went $3 million in the hole in 1 year. So while it's not excusable, there is a reason behind why we miss that date. Mr. Johnson, let me just a moment, please. Nope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if it would help, Andy, if you address the board, and this is more of a cash flow issue than it is a budget issue because of some decisions from the prior administration on when to pay certain expense items. And those, I don't think were fully understood, some of the insurance. And so this is caused by, it's just strictly cash flow, not budgetary. This expense we would have caught up later in the fiscal year. So but unfortunately, it's an expense that we have to pay upfront and stuff later. So I don't know if maybe, Andy, if you explain that would help the rest of the board understand why we're in this position when we didn't expect to be in this position a few months ago.
Sure, I'll run through that real quick, and thanks for the suggestion. We changed insurance carriers last year, and on our liability insurance, and we saved a pretty penny, between $300,000 and $400,000. I don't know the exact number. But when the deal was set up and the contract was actually signed, there was an election on when those bills would come due, and it was selected that we would pay 25% of that policy down, and then we would pay monthly until July, until the whole year was paid off. In our previous policies, we had paid in the second half of the year when we actually had revenue, we had cash. The first part of the year, as we all know, that's the tax desert. That's when we don't have really any tax revenue coming in. So we front loaded a policy that we did not budget for, even though the finance director did not have that in the budget. So as I received that stack of invoices, as soon as I picked myself up off the floor, I called the finance director and I said, what are we going to do about this? And so we've reached a deal, but we still have to pay a large portion of that, and then we catch up in July. So our insurance company is working with us, but we still had to actually make those payments to limp along until we get to the July date where we have to pay the rest of it. Up until maybe a month and a half ago, it looked like we were going to make it through, and this measure was not going to be necessary. And then all of a sudden, the grant and aid money didn't come in that we thought was going to come in from the state. The probation department is basically 80% grant and aid. That we're out $1.2 million from the state of Illinois on what they owe us for money that we've already spent. You can't budget for that type of thing because they've typically maybe been a month or two behind. But this time they're, Steve, 6 months, 8 months behind? Yeah, I mean, it's substantial. And so as Mr. Johnson alluded to, as a cash situation, this became real about 2 months ago. That's when my demeanor somewhat changed a little bit, and I started losing sleep because I saw this coming, and then we figured out, well, what are our options? We could not pay into pension, or we could reach out for other internal sources as it came, due. And for the first time since, I believe, 2011, our pension and our tort funds are actually above water. We're in the black. So we're doing good things out there financially, and we didn't want to affect that situation going forward by dipping into pension. That's just not a long-term solution for anything. So the best solution was a short-term cash fix, as long as we didn't keep stringing out the highway department and we acted in good faith on our previous commitments. So I hope that explains a little bit about what's going on. There was no way of knowing this, and this hadn't been communicated as far as the insurance situation. Nothing had been communicated to the current leadership, finance director, anybody, that this was even out there. And it hit us like a ton of bricks. So, Mr. Snipes.
Yes, I guess when I use the word I see it where it is written, but I'm having a problem with this language that at the end it says an additional 100,000. I got to have that word will, because that'll be consistent. That will be consistent with your previous paragraph that comes before it. There is no will, so there's no T-step in it. So $100 will be paid back to the highway department as partial reimbursement for other funds borrowed. And I'm assuming that the other funds are the $500,000, of which this $100,000 will be going to. So we can put the word will, and I'm guessing for the other funds, we are talking about the $500,000 that's outstanding.
No, I'm not sure if
the million is for it says return to the original accounts. And then it says an additional $100,000 will be paid back to the highway department as partial reimbursement for other funds borrowed. So the other funds would be the $500,000. Wouldn't that be correct?
Or it could be the original $3 million.
Or the $3 million.
It's out of those are two separate accounts, I believe, within the highway department, and it's discretionary on which one that Mr. Rogers would like us to place it into. He can tell us which one. It's his recommendation. So the word will is in there.
No,
it says will be returned to their original accounts by July 15th. That's the teeth that you're looking for.
Yeah, that's the teeth in the first one, but the $100,000 has no will.
Yeah, I'm looking at the end. It says an additional $100,000 will be returned to their original accounts.
It's an additional $100,000 be paid back.
Well, that's because it says recommend.
Oh, okay. So it just It's up to the discretion of the board
Well,
then.
no, it's not. That's the whereas part. This is the now therefore. There's a difference there.
Oh, okay. Well, the other one said whereas and will as well. Look at there, it said whereas the finance committee, So, oh, you looking down at now, therefore it be resolved. That's not where I'm talking.
Yeah.
So are we good?
Okay. So what they did is they got it and now therefore and left it
There,
out of
thank
it.
you.
I don't know.
All
Okay.
right, we're good.
Teeth in this thing and we ain't playing. I mean, I'm sure you're not playing games, but I want to make sure that the highway department gets its money because we do need some.
You got it. Any other discussion? I need a roll call vote then, please.
Mr. Tripp.
Aye.
Mr. Washington. Mr. Legess. Mr. Hess. Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk. Mr. McConnell. Mr. Mulcahy. Mr. Scott. Mr. Snipes. Mr. Byrne. Mr. Seroy. Mr. Lear. Mr. Hildebrand. Mrs. Weber. Mr. Einfeld. Mrs. Peters. Mrs. Evans. Mr. Payton. Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Parker. Mrs. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye, the motion carries. And just a point of interest, if you would like to watch the Finance Committee meeting where we discuss this in length, that's posted out there on the Google page and on the, there's links to it on the Facebook page for the county. I highly recommend anybody to go back and take a look at that because there was a more protracted discussion about the true financial picture that we're looking at. Okay, other business. We have some openings. One opening on the Blooms Grove Cemetery Association. One opening on the Limestone Fire Protection District. We have 11 openings on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission. 4 openings on the Kankakee County Zoning Board of Appeals. 2 openings on the Kankakee County Historic Preservation Committee. So those are now announced. They'll be posted, put in the paper, and brought back to executive, hopefully at the end of the month when we get applicants in. Old business, this is more of just an advisory. We had there was a highway resolution that we approved where we had an error in the numbering system, so it's just to let you know we changed the numbers on that. We've already straightened it out with all the appropriate documents. I was just letting the board know it's nothing we have to vote on. It was just a numbering system error to where we had 2 that had the same number. So we went back and we adjusted that with highway and with the appropriate downstream people that they need that to be adjusted. So is there any new business? Any old business? Other old business? Need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Legess, second. Mr. Mulcahy. All those in favor? Those opposed? Have a good day.
I think if somehow if you reach out to whoever's writing the resolution,
Who had the over-under on the quarter till?